knight f3, d6, d4, here a6, and bishop g5 was played. Regardless of which move was played, we are going to study now another important chapter. In fact, you can find it more often in the bishop g5 variation, opposite castling in the Najdorf, but with our bishop on g7. You can find it in versions of bishop g5 in most cases. Besides, bishop g5 is a very common move. So let's see. The move knight bd7 was played. The whole time throughout the centuries, e6 has always been either a lot more common than any other move or slightly more common than any other move. But knight bd7 is entirely playable and good. With this move, knight bd7, black is trying to be as flexible as possible with his e-pawn. He may play e6 at some moment, he may play e7 at some, e5 at some moment, or even e7. What does this mean? Or he may not move this pawn for a long time. So let's see what happened. White can play several moves, and he played queen e2. The idea of queen e2 is to castle long very fast, and then to possibly play g4 and bishop g2. Black has several ideas here. He can play e6. He can play h6 like he did in the game. He can play b5, an interesting move, but with lots of theory. And he can also play this wonderful, very nice idea, queen a5, which I am suggesting in the theoretical sessions in the past. So he played h6. The main move here is bishop h4. But in this game, he took here. And knight takes f6. And black castles. So we are in one strange line. On one hand, we have the pair of bishops. This doesn't mean much for now. On the other hand, white is faster with his development. He is already threatening moves like this one. Now, in such positions, in most cases, the best move, the best thing to do is to play something stable and steady, like e5. For example, if we choose such a move, let's say e6 here, yes, maybe even this move is good, but regardless of that, let's suppose that he plays white plays f4. Look what we have done. We have offered to white very easy play. For example, bishop e7 and bishop g2 intending h4. Is bishop g2 a mistake this time? No, I don't see any black knight going to c4 to this square anytime soon. So white plays bishop g2, and as it seems, he has very easy play. We cannot play such moves. We need to play, let's say, something like bishop d7. Now white may consider this move, or he may just go for h4, intending h5, and so on. Black will find himself in a position where he is objectively worse, and he even has very difficult moves to find, even if he is not worse. So let's go back and see how this happened. After castling, I am not talking in particular, not even about this position. I am saying how one should think when he comes across an unknown position, or how he should choose a line out of the many playable lines. For example, I am suggesting that maybe the engine considers e6 to be okay, not in this position, generally speaking. But if we think about it from human's point of view, we give to our opponent very easy play. And for black, we give to ourselves very difficult play because we don't really know what to do. So, in fact, the right move here is e5. And how should white continue in this position? What do you think? Here is another critical question. How should white play here? Let's see. Let's see. Let's gather a few answers. What do you think? So in this position, it is absolutely important, absolutely essential. You all found it, almost everybody, to play knight f5. This is very important, intending to go here. If white plays a move like knight f3 or even knight b3, now this is a big mistake. The knight is very far away from this square, which is the square of interest for white. And so white gave up his important dark square bishop, and he even covered his remaining bishop for no good reason. For example, we can play bishop e7. Let's suppose he plays a move like queen d2. He needs to be careful about such ideas, though, bishop g5. So we will grab this important post with bishop e6. Let's say he plays king b1. And in this position, black is already better. We feel it that we have very strong defense on the dark squares. It will take way too long for white to try an attack on the dark squares against our king, while black has a very quick attack with b5, b4, and so on. So this position, without any doubt, is much better for black. After e5, in fact, it is theory. White goes here, and this is a different story because he wants to go here very quickly, and here there is a typical idea for black. Black plays bishop e6. He can even start with g6 and knight e3. And he plays rook c8 once again, of course. If, for example, white plays this move, we will definitely sacrifice here because this sacrifice is of strategical, positional nature. Yes, we still want to checkmate him positionally and tactically, I mean, but it is even of strategical nature. Very good. For example, he can play here, let's say. He avoids immediate checkmate, but we don't really care. We continue with such moves, we castle short, and we have tremendous positional compensation. Of course, we will play a position like this with black. We will not be scared to play. But if I play with a good opponent, no. Exactly then is when you will not hesitate. You may hesitate when you play with a very weak opponent, but never when you play with a very good opponent, because you have nothing to lose. You will attack, you will enjoy the game, and you will have very good chances to win the game. It is, in fact, right the opposite. The theoretically best player will be very stressed with white here because he knows he is in danger. So, of course, we will play like this. The best way to beat a theoretically better opponent is with different material, either extra material for us where he failed to find compensation and he loses, or less material for us like here, but a compensation that is so powerful that there is nothing he can do. Very good. So after bishop e6, knight e3, rook c8 was played, and this was the move that we were expecting. Knight takes d5 and knight takes d5. So it appears as if white is doing great. Indeed, if white had better development, he would have a big advantage. For example, if I take this bishop from f1 and put it here, this position is very bad for black, really very bad. However, the bishop is on f1, and in an open position, in an active open position, putting the queen in front of the bishop will delay white's development. How should black continue, however? Chess is a concrete game. How should black continue here? Should he play g6, for example, bishop e7? Which move? Let's see. Should he maybe take on d5 or not? Let's see. what is your suggestion here? There is a very typical idea by black. With the black pieces, it's Dominguez Perez, and he knows very well what he is doing. So I had no doubt that he will play this move. So an interesting idea might be g6, intending either bishop g7 or h5 and bishop h6, and we can live for some time with this knight. But in fact, there is a very basic idea here, which is rook c5, and black was intending to play this move right from the start, because it's theoretical. Here and now we want to take the knight. White played g3. If he goes here, we will grab this knight from his hand before he even leaves it on c3. If he goes knight e3, we can possibly already capture this pawn. So white played g3, and now we immediately eliminate this knight on d5 because white will be forced to end up with a pawn. So rook takes d5. Of course, we capture this rook. And black goes g6. Now black has a huge positional advantage because his bishop from g7, and we are studying opposite castling with the bishop on g7, which can happen in countless different situations. And black has a huge positional advantage because white's light square bishop is very bad. Bishop g2 was played. It is important to note that after h4, we should not play this move because h5 is coming, and now the opposite may happen. We may end up with very weak light squares. We don't want to play something like this. Now it is black who will be better. So after h4, it is very important to play h5. I don't care if I will put it here or if I will give a check in order to castle very fast and then put it back to g7. It's important to play h5. So in the game, bishop g2 was played, and black goes bishop g7. King b1 is a slow move, and now black castles, and he is already much better. h4 was played, and look, I wanted to say that black can always sacrifice this pawn because queen b6 is coming with tremendous compensation. Possibly, white should try this move, this prophylactic move, defending against this queen b6 idea. And now, possibly the best move for black is just f5, intending e4. But theoretically speaking, even this move right away makes a lot of sense. We sacrifice a pawn. For example, queen takes, but we have a lot of compensation. Let's say here, queen c2 protecting against all the threats, and rook e8, there is huge strategical compensation for black here because black is practically playing with an extra bishop. And what is black's idea? We have developed our pieces, and black's idea is to include these pawns in the attack, b5, a5, b4, and so on, in order to open up this bishop and create winning chances. So, of course, black, who is a very experienced player, was aware of this e4 gambit. Not in this particular position. This is not theory, but it's a very typical idea. So the move e4 was played. Bishop takes and queen b6. White is in trouble. He played c3, and bishop takes c3 with a strategically winning game for black. Queen c2 was played. The bishop goes back to g7, and this is objectively winning for black because the bishop from g7 is super powerful. h5, g5. This g5 doesn't matter anymore. White doesn't have the time to rearrange his pieces and threaten this checkmate. Besides, if you think about it, even if white finds all the time to put somehow his bishop on c2 and his queen on d3, we will just move this rook, and then queen h7 check, king f8 is really nothing. While in the meanwhile, we will have checkmated him. So bishop f6 is very interesting. Black finds this nice square for his bishop, and additionally here, for his king, I mean, And additionally, he removes the king from the 8th rank because he wants to activate his rook right away with this move. The rook is not dropping with check. So here, but rook c8 was played, and rook takes c1. Should black play rook c8? This is a question that does not concern the Najdorf directly, but it's a positional question. The answer is yes. Black should play rook c8 now, because if you think about it, there are no other open files for the rook. If you go here, you can never do anything. Here it's meaningless. You can step here now. If white plays the queen here, then look, white's rook will be eternally, or here, more active than ours. So it is better to trade one rook if you cannot make it more active than the opponent's. And here black is better. His plan remains to push the b and a pawns. Later, black won the game. Very good. Let's check another game. Let's check this one. Here there is big difference in the two opponents. White has a rating of close to 1900 and black is 2500. There is difference also in the age of the opponents as well. So let's examine after f4, this move g6 was played. This is a rare move, but it is playable. Usually they play queen c7 here or h6 and so on. So g6 was played and white played queen f3 and h6 is useful. He takes it and knight takes f6. White cannot play e5 here because his knight from d4 is hanging. Otherwise, e5 would have been a very good move, this one. But his knight is hanging. Unfortunately for white, he cannot castle long, of course, because of bishop g4. So he needs to lose some time. He played h3. Objectively, the best move is f5. After f5, black can play two good moves. g5 is good, and even queen c7 is good. But aren't we quite weak here? In fact, no, because black's idea is probably to castle long this time. Very good. And another playable move after f5, instead of queen c7, is g5. For example, he castles long. Let's step away from the various tactics. And again, black's idea can be to castle long. For example, here, white's attack is very fast. So rook g8, for example, and black or bishop g7 here and castles long. We all know which is the next move for black whenever we castle long in such situations. Which is the next move for black, of course? The next move is always king b8. Very good. And rook c8. The theory says that black can castle long. Listen to this important deep idea, deep knowledge of the Najdorf. Black can castle long when white does not have his dark square bishop. This is a rule with exceptions, of course, but generally this is what is the right thing to say. Black can castle long when white doesn't have his dark square bishop. If he had his dark square bishop, the problem is that our a7 square is not safe. Imagine here and queen e3 and the queen constantly targeting this square on a7. So in general, that's a general rule, of course, it is good for black. It can be good for black to castle only if white doesn't have a dark square bishop, like here. Let's see how the game was played. After knight takes f6, white didn't play this f5. He played h3 in order to castle long, but this is a rather slow move, and black correctly played e5. That's a very good move, e5, intending to develop fast, and in several cases, he may even capture on f4. White took here first, d takes e5, here, and bishop g7. It doesn't matter that the bishop is in a closed diagonal for now. What matters is to protect this knight, which is hanging, and castle, And then black will see what to do. This bishop is good on g7. Maybe he can put it on h6 later, or it can always go here. But this bishop is for the protection of the king. White played bishop d3. Queen c7 was played. White castles long, and black castle short. So in this position, objectively, black is, of course, better. g4 was played, and black played bishop e6, natural development. King b1 is useful, and rook f to d8. Maybe white should have played this, but then again, black will take it, and there are problems. Which move should be considered by black now? We already know this motive. Which move should be considered by black? The move is e4, and in fact, it seems to me that this is an even very powerful move, because I see queen e5 here, and we are targeting the pawn on b2. It seems that white is in big trouble. For example, after this, we will take here, and we will take on b2. And after this, we will just take on d5, threatening this pawn, and white is in big trouble. Very good. So we know the idea. We may use it in our games. This move was played, and rook f to d8. Black has a very clear advantage. This is very powerful for now stabilizing the position. And later in the endgame, if we reach an endgame, it can always go somewhere out. So here, this move was played, which is interesting. It is meant to stop knight b5, queen d3, and b5. Black has a big advantage. Finally, he took it, and he played this sacrifice for threat. Here, after calculation, threatening the pawn on c2, and knight e3, some nice ideas, knight c4, the b2 pawn and the rook, and black, after all these nice combinations. Let's check another high level. The g6, bishop g7, knight. Here the move h6 was played, just like before, and white played bishop d2. Now, black played an interesting move, e5. Let's see, which other move is interesting for black here? Who can tell? Which other move, according to what we have said so far, is quite interesting for black to be considered? Very good. The move to be considered is is forcing him to go here. And now, white would like to play this move. Some typical ideas in these positions. Here, and queen c7. h5 move. However, white played e5, black played e5, and knight f5 is the only logical move. If he plays here, then black has a very good game. For example, b5. Remember, when you are developed with knight bd7, very often the move b5 is good. You just need knight bd7 with the bishop here, and b5 intending maybe to go here. Is this the perfect Najdorf setup? No, black stands very well, but this is not called the perfect Najdorf setup because the e4 pawn is not hanging theoretically. Regardless of that, black is better. So after e5, the knight has to come here, in order to target this square. Let's see what happened though. Black plays knight c5. Already there are some threats. He is probably threatening to take here. And queen f3 was played. White cannot really play this move because now he will lose this pawn. So queen f3 was played, protecting everything, and b5. Black castles and bishop b7. So with very active play, white is forced to play this move, knight g3, which is very passive, a very bad thing to do, being forced to play like this, and black is better. He plays rook c8. I like this move, adding tactics, adding ideas like b4 and so on. White feels the danger. You see, it is very important. If you can move a rook and your opponent has to move a king, this is really something in the equation. Yes, we develop a piece. This is like a lot more aggressive than, let's say, bishop e7, for example, which gives to white a lot of freedom. So here already adding some pressure. For example, he can play this. Yes, but our rook c8 move is a bit more useful than his a3 move. So this is how we must think. We add energy the whole time, move by move. And king b1 was played. And I really like black's move here. In this position, black played g6. That's a very, very high level move because it stops knight f5, and now the knight on g3 is really very bad. And remember the chess principle, this deep, indeed, very deep Najdorf idea, which you will never find in any book. The moves g6 and e5 tend to combine well together in the Najdorf. So having this extra argument on our side, this is again something. On the next move, we are not necessarily going to put it here. We can even put it here and then play king f8, king g7, for example, or h5 to remove the threat from the h6 pawn and then castle. So the move g6 is not necessarily in order to play bishop g7 in the Najdorf. Sometimes you play g6 and e5 in order to control all the central squares, and the bishop can be developed on e7. So h4 was played, and indeed, we must not make things easy for white. Allow him to play this just like that. He plays h4 and h5. This makes things quite easy. In fact, we have to play this move h5. And what if he goes here? If he goes here, black will play this move. Bishop e7, and then castle, or maybe even here and here. Let's see what happened. After here, white played bishop d3, and black played bishop g7. He is not worried about this move, bishop g5, because he has something concrete in his mind. Indeed, bishop g5 was played, but the bishop will not stay there for too long. The knight is coming to e6 in order to annoy the bishop. Of course, if necessary, even this would have been interesting. There is a clever idea, very clever, I like it very much, this one. Yes, indeed, this looks like a very clever idea. Our pieces look a little bit clumsy, so, but strategically it is very interesting. I don't know if it stands tactically. I am a little bit afraid of such things, but maybe because our rook is badly placed for tactics. If the game is quiet, we go back on the next move. It seems to me that black will win here. So I think bishop h6 is strategically quite good. Yes. If he can play this, that's the critical move, in fact. And now possibly we have to take it, maybe play here. Here, it's even better. Yes. So it seems that bishop h6 is very interesting. So bishop g7 was played and knight c6, knight e6. Black is much better. So white decided to sacrifice here, but knight d4, and the compensation is not enough Black had seen this very clever move, queen c2, threatening checkmate and stepping away from all the threats. c3, and he moves the knight away. Look, we can even put it here, but no, when we have the chance, we play more aggressively. Knight g4 is, as they say, better or equal with knight d7. Very good. Here, and black took this rook and he castled and he has a rook up. He won the game. Very good. Let's check this game. So here, let's check this high-level game. Again, Najdorf, this is not good. We have several other things to see, but we start with this bishop g7 Najdorf, which is so important. So here, queen c7 this time, queen f3 and b5. This position looks very much like these classical lines of the Najdorf. If we play e6, for example, from the era of Bobby Fischer, who would play this position and beat everybody with both colors. So, however, black can delay the move e6, and he plays bishop b7, which is basic theory. And he has stayed flexible. On the next move, he can play e6 or g6. Let's see. White played bishop d3. Let's comment a little bit on this bad move. Knight b3. Several players, sometimes without even any threat, tend to play such moves. The knight is misplaced on b3. We have already commented on that. Is misplaced on b3 because it doesn't take active part in the game. Now look, I want to play this move, but I very much dislike this position. Sometimes the engine gives an advantage to black in such position. Look, for example, here. But practically, yes, black will win a pawn, but look, practically, these positions can be very annoying. Look, let's say I play something like this, or here, or whatever. Look, although black is up a pawn, this is a very annoying position because white may have an attack. So in general, if we cannot avoid it, we will go for it. But if we can avoid it, it is good to do so. So look, instead of b4, I very much prefer this move now, e6. Here, black has a great game. And I would like to point out now another very nice, very deep idea, which we have seen in some game of Topalov in the past. So it is black to move here. He has a few ideas. He can play rook c8, he can play bishop e7, and so on. However, there is one even deeper idea. This idea is working when white tends to work when white has two knights on c3 and on b3. Look at the idea. First of all, I don't want to play this move. What is this move? No, I don't want to play this move because then whenever you play this, he will jump knight d5. So in all the complications, after this, let's say he goes here and we continue and king b1. After this, white will not go to anywhere else but here. He will enter the complications, and even if he is to sacrifice a pawn, he will have strong compensation. So after e6 and bishop d3, e5 is not working. It is anyway illogical. How does it work? When I do this and b4, he jumps to d5. First, I want to chase this knight away. Now, white cannot put the knight on d5. He will lose. And look, after he goes here, now, I don't want to play a5 because he escapes and he is even quite proud, although black still has a fine game. So first we play b4, and after knight e2 or any other move, how will black continue here? Who would like to suggest? How will black continue? Very good. The move is e5. And now we will continue with a very fast a5, a4. Black has a great game. For example, here I can consider a5 or even this move, bishop to e7, intending to go a5 later. And I saw bishop e7, I calculated this move. Indeed, I calculated this move, and I was intending to play here because I am happy that the knight from g3 is restricted, but I also know one thing. The move g6 with the move e5 tend to work well together. It doesn't mean that we did everything perfect and black is better or whatever. I cannot say this for sure, but black has a very good position. Very good. In my mind, black is better. So let's see what happened in this game. b5, castles, bishop here. White didn't play this move, knight b3, but it had to be commended. e6, intending b4 and e5. So he played bishop d3. This is basic theory, and black plays g6. Now, white has very narrow choices here in order not to be worse. He has to play this move. It has already been played many times. And after this, he has to jump knight d5 right away because we cannot win this knight. Our pawn on e7 is hanging and we will lose. And so here they play this move and theory continues and so on with interesting play for both sides. In the end, we may end up in an equal endgame as so often. However, this rook e1 and knight d5 has to be played. There is no other solution for black, but several players are losing one tempo. For example, by h3, and now black is already better. The bishop is really very powerful on g7. This is not working anymore. We take it and we win the knight on e3. And black is better. Black intends to castle. We are even threatening this move because there is no knight d5, you see? And he is in trouble. For example, he played queen e3. If he plays here, look, no, I won't do this. Again, he will jump knight d5, and again, this is hanging. But what will I do? After rook e1, now I am in time to castle. And now I'm threatening b5. White is in big trouble. For example, after this, I play b4. He cannot do this. He is losing material. So b4, and for example, here, and some time ago, in some of the games, we have already seen a very nice idea for black in a similar situation. How should black continue here? Let's see. Black has a few ways to play and get the advantage. How should black continue in this position? Let's see. Black, who will suggest? Very good. Black, among other moves, black can play e5. We play e5, and then we can even capture with a knight. Here we have a very happy choice. This makes perfect sense because he is forced to go here, and now we are attacking very powerfully with a4, a5, and so on. But even this makes a lot of sense. I take here with tempo. For example, he plays here, and let's say rook here. Black has a great position, very good attacking chances, very powerful pieces. So we put the pawn on e5 in order to put the knight on e5. Let's see what happened in the game. After g6, h3 is a bad loss of tempo. Here, queen e3, and black castles. Black is already better. g4 was played, and it is black to move. I see several interesting ideas, 3-4 interesting ideas. b4 makes perfect sense because after knight d5, look, first of all, we can even take with the bishop and then with the knight. But this is good enough. We are threatening the rook, and even if we were not threatening the rook, look, if he takes here, rook e8, he's going to lose material. So b4 is very good. This is what was played. Knight c2, e2. And once again, the move e5 is very powerful. It is not the only move. I am guessing that we can even play here. This move also makes sense. But I like e5 better whenever it is possible. And here white played knight f3. If he takes on e5, we are facing this typical dilemma. Should we take with the pawn or with the knight? Maybe we should take with the knight in this position here. And we have good attacking possibilities. For example, after this, instead of retreating, I can even take here with check, use the momentum, and take on e4. So I guess he should be careful about it, and he should play king to b1. And now we can play this harmonious move, rook to e8. Maybe the knight can go here later, and so on. Black, in my view, black has a completely winning position. This is also on the agenda. After this, possibly, can we even take here? I don't know. And knight c4. It may not be so easy. Actually, yes, it is. Black is completely winning. So here and knight c4, we are not lucky to have this combination. Everything has been working perfectly so for black. That's why we have this combination. By the way, I would like to point out another move here. Look at our powerful bishops. Here is another move, and queen takes c2. You see, everything is pinned. And queen takes e2. Possibly, white will say, okay, I have seen enough. Let's see. Very good. So black castles, and he is already better. However, do not hope to get such a position so easily, of course, to be better with black in 12 moves. This requires a mistake by white, either one big mistake or several small mistakes. So let's see what happened. The knight f3 was played, and black takes here, and he plays rook e8. One may wonder, how about my d6 pawn? Isn't it going to be weak? I will say that this is the last thing that matters in a position like this. Yes, a weakness on d6. We may even sacrifice the pawn. So we are threatening for the moment to win his e4 pawn. So this move was played, and rook a to c8. Remember, in this active position, active situation, should I play a5 and a4? If I have to choose, I prefer to develop my pieces. Look, this move is very basic. And when I'm done with moving my pieces, then I can possibly play a5 and a4 if I don't have anything great. So remember, learn by this move. If you consider the position very active, very aggressive for both sides, play with pieces, develop new pieces. If you consider that there are slow attacks, you can continue with a5 and a4. So rook a to c8 to me looks very good. Rook h2, you see, he played rook h2. Our move rook c8 is much more useful than rook h2, for example, right? So now black played knight c5. Is this blundering something? No, it is not. Black could also consider this move after calculation, a5. Let's see what happened. Knight c5, bishop takes, and I guess knight e6, intermediate move. Yes, knight e6, that is very nice here. And bishop takes f6, and this is a winning position for black. White played here. If white takes on b4, we can play we have several interesting moves. Even this is interesting, threatening the knight on g3 and do this. Again, black is better, but do not be afraid to sacrifice such pawns. I'm guessing that this move, for example, with great attacking chances, this is enough in order for black to have a tremendous attack, tremendous compensation. We may turn to the b file in the end. Okay, so rook g1, very slow play. Black played d5, and she won a fine game. Very good. Let's check now one game I play with the black pieces as a guest. This is a comparatively easy win, but still I wanted to share it with you because it has some important principles. So Queen f3, b5 was played. This game was played in 2012. It's just a bleach game. a3. No, white should not lose any tempo. White should be very fast to play bishop d3, rook e1, and knight d5. He is losing one tempo. Now g6 becomes very effective. g4 was played. White now is not in time to do this. Let's see. Bishop here and this, because we castle, and he cannot play knight d5 anymore. Of course, he is losing this piece. So after this, he is in trouble. For example, g4, we will consider e5, and after taking possibly knight takes e5, and there is another idea to consider, this idea here. Remember this queen b6 idea, which works very well on several occasions. It tends to be very good. We are pushing his pieces away, and we will play, for example, this move. Of course, it goes without saying that if he allows us, we will take on c3. Very good. So let's see what happened. g4 was played, bishop here, and bishop g2. Every strange placement of the pieces, like this bishop g2 here, is very welcome. Black castles, and he's certain that he has a big advantage. White goes h4. Yes, he should go for it. And black must counterattack. Let's see. How should black continue in this position? Let's see. How should black continue? I see two very nice moves. Should we play h5? The answer is no, absolutely not. We got carried away. Have you ever seen this h5 being played somewhere? No, not at all. Maybe if it was this position, look, the pawn still here, let's say, maybe now I can consider h5 if I see that it will take too long for him to play g4. No, h5 is a big mistake. We are playing from the wrong side of the board. If I do this, he will happily take it. And if I take here, I don't know, he will start attacking maybe with this move and so on. We are playing from the wrong side of the board. No. After h4, we must either play this move because there is a threat behind this move. Look at this move. If he plays h5, I will take here, look, and I will take on d4, and I'm threatening this checkmate here. Or, of course, I see h4, the idea should be a typical move. And by the way, if I add one quote, how should I react to pawn play? Either play on the other side, or even more importantly, how should I react to pawn play flank attack? My opponent is playing for a flank attack. How should I react? By striking in the center. Everything agrees. Of course, I don't play chess by chess principles. They are one extra verbal argument and nothing more and nothing less. Very good. So e5 is what was played. White played knight f5. We will come to this move after a while. White can collect 3 pawns, but these pawns are useless. He is just opening up lines for our attack. You see, here, for example, he's just opening lines for an attack. I can play this move, or let's say bishop c6 and so on, and rook b8, and we have a very strong attack and one extra piece. So after e5, black played knight f5, white played knight f5. This idea does not work because after accepting the sacrifice, of course I will accept the sacrifice. It's too late to be scared. Now, black is a piece up, and as I like to say, both opponents have an attack. These kind of sacrifices may work and may complicate matters, and even if white is losing objectively, it may make it very complicated and interesting if it is only white who has an attack, and black must defend for the rest of the game. But here, black must not defend, he can also counterattack. So this is in fact completely winning. I played h6, but what if he leaves the bishop there? I don't promise that I will capture the bishop. I can play other moves. On the next move, I can play here. I can take here on f4. Yes, I'm not obliged to take here. Very good. He took on f6, knight takes, and in fact, king h8, there is absolutely nothing for compensation. Of course, we need to be careful, but look, I play here. I'm already threatening to take, for example. He played this, rook g8. There is nothing to be done. Black won this game quite easily. Finally, I would like to show you one game which I have shown on another occasion against young grandmaster who is Greek grandmaster but living in Switzerland, Nico Georgiadis. So this is a bleach game. We were playing for the Greek Cup several years ago. I won the standard game, but there was a tie break between the teams and we had to play bleach games. So he played queen d3. We are playing now in fast tempo. I played g6. Very soon, if you play queen d3, you will get out of book. So here, and knight bd7, we were now out of book and just playing logical moves. So bishop e2 was played, and I played queen c7. I want to play b5, but we need to be careful. There are always such ideas here. For example, look at this. There you go. And check. A good way to die. So we need to be careful. Here, we do not allow this knight c6 move so easily. We calculate it first. If we have played e6, of course, and we have a bishop on f8, then we can play b5. This knight c6 is nothing. Yes, if this was here and we had a bishop on f8, we would go b5. Here I play queen c7 just to stay a bit more flexible. My next move is going to be b5, bishop b7, and so on. He played h4. And here, yes, I know now, I don't have anything great in the center. Should I play this? Well, the knight doesn't usually go here. Imagine if I put this, if I play this, he will move the queen, and now he's threatening to take here and play knight d5. I cannot take with my knight on f6 anymore. My knight is gone, you see? So I don't want to play knight c5, which appears to be good. It is bad. We need to play h5 now. h5 without allowing him to attack. He played f4. Now I started feeling that b5 is rather slow, so I castled. He played queen e3, and I played e5. Knight b3. If he takes it, I would probably take with the pawn and play b5 with good play. So after e5, he played here, and b4, b5, there is no time to lose. Black must attack fast. f5 was played, but this is a bad move, really, because f takes g6, f takes g6 is not really a threat. I played bishop here. In fact, b4 would have been even better. I played bishop here, and now he took here. He should have played a3, although black is still better. So he played bishop f3, and there follows b4. Knight d5, I take it. And now look, yes, I want to play this gambit. It is screaming, as they say, to be played, this e4. However, if I play this, sooner or later, his knight from b3 will appear on d4 and on e6. If I play this and he goes bishop e2, he doesn't accept the gambit. So First, I want to chase this knight away. I can afford to do it. Look, I chase his knight away. He abandons the e4 square. He goes here. And of course, in the Najdorf, in any case, you must play actively. Even if I play e4, the consequences are unclear. If I don't play e4, the consequences are still unclear. So we prefer to have active play and unclear situations. If you saw a win, even better, rather than passive play and still unclear situations. So yes, e4 is the best move, and this is completely winning for black. In fact, he takes it, knight takes e4, he takes with the queen, but he doesn't really have a threat. I have very big threats against his king. I play b3. I have seen that after this check, I can always go here, and it will take too long for white to do something special while I'm checkmating him on the other side. So I played b3. Look at this nice end. He took here. Anyway, he is losing. I took on a2. He cannot go to a1 because a3 is coming, and my king is quite safe. If here a3, and if he gives this check, I just go here. My king survives for one or two moves, and I give check. So look what happened. He took here, and a nice combination, which I have seen several moves ago. A3, he goes here. Queen c3, threatening checkmate. He goes here, and still queen b2. And I won this fine game. Enough with g6, bishop g7. Let us quickly go to something else. So let's quickly start studying other lines. We will now study the most important lines in the Najdorf with opposite castling. We saw with e6, we saw with g6, bishop g7 in some versions, in several versions. Now we will see this, but without f4 by white, e takes f4. So here, and white just plays f3, queen d2, castles long, g4, and so on. This is the most basic. Black, after f3, has two basic ideas and several possible variations, but two basic ideas. He can play with h5, the move h5, which was played here, or he can play without h5. So both make sense, in my opinion, objectively, based on the engines of the last years. H5 is the best move. So I used to play other moves with tremendous success, but h5 is the best. So the move h5 will delay white's attack with g4 for many moves. However, when and if g4 is finally played by white, it will have an even bigger effect. So this is the game between Spiedler and Topalov, super high level game. Queen d2 was played. Black has to go knight bd7 and castles long. And now black has a few ways to arrange his pieces. He should put the bishop here. He can play with rook c8 or with queen c7 and b5 and so on. All these ideas are playable. He played bishop e7. And the same goes for white. White can play several moves here. He played h3. But this allows h4 at some moment. Why didn't black play h4? Because for now, white is not threatening g4. This is still losing material. Another idea for white is g3. But the problem with g3 is that it is very slow. The idea is to play h3. Now there is not h4 for black because white goes g4. h3, move the bishop to d3, and then g4, but it's very slow, as we can see. Black, again, can play plans with queen c7 and b5 and so on, or with rook c8 and b5. Queen c7 is what we call Topalov's idea, which was played also in this game. For example, h3, let's see, b5, and let's suppose that white goes bishop d3. Now, this position, there are so many versions of these positions which look like each other, and it is impossible to put them in order. Some grandmasters, some authors have tried to do that, but the result is so confusing that no student can really memorize it, and I'm sure they have already forgotten it too. So it's better to play on general principles with some memorization. So here there are two moves for black to consider. One is b4. It has to be calculated. It looks very good, in fact, because if he goes here, look, I see that we can take this pawn. We can easily take this pawn. I don't see any compensation. And after b4, if he plays this is very passive, of course. Yes, we go a5, black is almost winning. And the same goes for this. We go a5, black is better. Can he play here? Well, his knight will soon be in danger. Possibly I can already do this. And after taking, I can play maybe d5. I'm threatening the queen. Or instead of queen c6, we can maybe start with a5, and this is coming soon. So, in fact, white's idea with this slow play with h3 and g3 completely backfired. If we go a few moves back after b5, yes, white, instead of developing, may consider a3. By the way, after bishop here, which is the other move instead of b4? The other move to consider is this. Knight here, intending knight c4. When he captures or c4, how do I take? All the options are open, but quite often I will take with a pawn. For example, let's say we play this move, knight b6. Look, he goes here. That's a bad move, g4 in this position, because we will play knight c4. And look, terrible news are coming for white. We will take with the b pawn, and he is forced to play this knight here to a1. Black has a huge advantage now. And if we investigate such a position even deeper, we will say that our plan is to play rook b8 and queen b7, forcing him to play b3. And after b3, let's say we are here, after b3, the c file will be open and this pawn enters the play. Let's consider, of course, here g4 is a bad move. Let's suppose that again we will play knight. He won't go. Our plan will be again the same. Rook b8, and theoretically speaking, we want to force the C file, which we can open at any moment, and the B file, and even A5, A4, the A file. So what is happening here objectively? Objectively, black should be much better. For example, after this, I can castle, and after G5, consider this, but I see knight here. Let's say knight. Now, maybe I should play bishop b8, for example, and so on. Or maybe I have a good position here if I keep the queens here on the board. And the game continues. Of course, it is very complicated and interesting. Let me play a game by myself. I play here, so he takes it. I take with the rook. He goes here, and as promised, I play a5. I can include my a pawn in the game. So this is a chaotic position. Black seems to be doing very well. So let's go back once again. Bishop e7. h3 was played by Peter Svidler. g3 is a bit slow. Let's consider this move, king b1, which is entirely playable. Again, black can play either with queen c7 and then b5 and knight b6 or rook b8 and so on, or he can play rook c8. Very good. let us consider this move. How about this move? Or let me put it this way. H3 was played, Topalov played queen c7, and bishop d3. How about this move? How to continue with black here? Let's see. What do you think? Remember what about white's f4? Remember about white's f4. There are bishop c8 development, bishop e6 by himself, and bishop e6, knight bd7 full development. In 4, we ignore it. We ignore it. Which are the possible moves? Either rook c8 or even better, b5. Very good. We ignore it for quite some time. However, at some moment, it is very possible that we will take it if it stays there for too long. By the way, I don't think he can even play this. Can I just take here and take on e4 or take here immediately? I don't know. So b5, for example, after this, we may even consider taking or just playing this move here, bishop c4, with good play for black. For example, after this, once again, I will consider b4. I can consider such moves. I can even consider h4 and so on. Look at this move, h4. For example, he takes it. I take with the pawn. He goes here. And once again, this is our plan. Rook b8, intending to force him to play b3 and then play with the whole with all of our pieces. For example, this is already a mistake. I don't capture the knight. I could even capture it, but queen b7, for example, is an elegant move. And now I want to take this. Very good. Of course, black is better here because I haven't played very good moves for white, but it is very important for our understanding to study all these typical ideas. So h3, queen c7 is the Topalov plan, followed by b5 and knight b6 or rook b8 and so on. White played bishop d3. White's idea now is to play g4. He didn't bother to play g3 because it is too slow. So black has two moves now. Of course, not this. This is completely out of the question. This is definitely not our plan. White is better developed in the center. So one move for black is definitely h4 and possibly the best. And the other one is to ignore it with b5. Topalov played h4. On the next move, black wants to play b5 most likely. How should white continue? Again, you see, we cannot memorize it. White can play all sorts of moves. For example, he played f4. He can play king b1. He can play rook e1. So don't try to memorize it. It's completely impossible. f4. Once again, which move do we expect to see by Topalov? We expect to see which move? We expect to see the move b5, of course. And this is what he did. Then rook to e1. What is the meaning of this move? He wants to jump in knight d5 at some moment. And black plays rook b8. Let's see, king b1. And knight b6 is his idea, intending knight c4. Queen f2 was played. After f5, now, look, this move doesn't really make sense with a knight on b6. In fact, now you may see this move. Bishop here intending knight c4. That's the idea of rook b8, to put the knight on c4 and have a powerful knight. Or, of course, we can also play b4, depending on the situation, to put it here. And if he takes, we take with a b pawn, and our rook is very useful on b8. You will study the rest of the game by yourself. Let's study a few more games. For example, this internet bleach game. Let's study it. So the opposite castling with h5. Black played b5. This is some sort of concrete move. h3 was played. White usually plays here, and after this, black usually takes it. And yet, in this particular position, this is the best move, rook c8, for concrete, specific reasons. Very good. So h3 was played, and black played h4. This move makes perfect sense. Rook g1, and now black can play queen c7, rook c8. I can also play this, but I don't see any reason. Let's leave it here since he is intending to play g3. So rook c8 was played, g4, we take en passant, and here black can play queen c7 or knight b6 just like he did. Black's king is comparatively safe on e8. Let's see, queen f2 was played. We are not in time to sacrifice on c3, otherwise we would have sacrificed. Knight a4 was played, which is very interesting. According to the almighty engine, an unbelievable move, knight back to d7 is the best. And after knight d5, we take it, and g6, and we are better. Yes, we may continue with bishop h6. Remember the principles. For example, let's say he goes here. Let me threaten his rook. And after this move, look, I can go bishop h6 because the principle is valid 100%. When white has played e takes d5, we want to trade the dark square bishop. One may say, oh, where did you remember in this chaos this principle? And yet it is important. Very good. So this move, knight a4 was played, knight d5, and queen c7, and so on. Black was better. He played g6, intending bishop g7. Look at our king on e8. He is feeling quite safe. And black later won the game. Let's check a few more games, like, for example, just a second. Let's check this one. White won a nice game here. The player with the black pieces is called Anand, but not Vishy Anand. His rating is 2023. So let's see what happened. Bishop e6, slightly different order. Finally h5, and knight bd7. Several moves for black, for white, and he plays h4. This move, h4, is a mistake. Although the engine doesn't call it a mistake, but objectively, it's a big mistake. Why? Because after you play h4, this move becomes very difficult to play. This is one thing. And another thing is which move by white now becomes bad, becomes repelling after h4, which move by white, not natural move under natural circumstances, looks very bad. This move, very good. Here, it doesn't fit well with h4. So this h4 is a bad move. How can black continue? Should he know, memorize theory and so? No, he should play logical moves. Either b5 or queen c7, intending b5, or even rook c8. If he jumps knight d5, let's say here, after knight d5, both moves are playable. You can see this move sometimes, but in this particular position, for example, I prefer this. Let's see, followed by knight b6. Look at this move, this very typical idea, knight b6, intending to take on d5. And now if he is forced to take here, we will be very happy. Queen takes b6, and our dark square bishop is super powerful, much better than white's. So let's see what happened after h4. b5 was played, and a3. And now black can consider queen c7, rook c8, or even knight b6, just like he played. Then queen f2 and knight c4. We could theoretically prepare knight c4 by starting with this move. However, we are missing one tempo. This can be annoying. You see, if, for example, he plays here, let's see. Now we are in time to get done with all these moves. Let's play queen c7. We are done with all these moves. And finally, we jump in knight c4. Black has a big advantage. After this, we can even take here, but regardless of that, if he takes it, even g takes f6 can be considered, if necessary. So here, black is just better. Very good. The position, of course, remains complicated. It's a Najdorf. This goes without saying. So knight c4 was chosen now, and white played this interesting idea. If we take it, this is a typical idea. Bishop b6, we are losing the queen if we take this knight. How about knight c5? Knight c5 is also playable, and we will go queen c7, and after this, f takes e6. We have a nice center. This idea remains, and queen b7, for example, here, preparing to defend with bishop here. We can castle short, and that's a very complicated, very interesting position. d5 may come, and so on. Very good. It seems that black is doing very well. Okay, let's see what happened. Knight a5, queen c8, maybe rook c8 was better according to the engine. So queen c8 was played, knight d5, and here bishop d2. I'm not sure if black stands so well. Bishop b5 and bishop d8. This is an unclear position which white managed to win in the end. Very good. Okay, let's check now one game. Just a second. Let's change the subject. Let's check now variations without h5 by black. Here we go. Knight bd7. Black doesn't play h5, so white will play g4 sooner or later. He played g4 right away. Knight b6 is a typical idea and part of the theory. When you see g4, we are not talking about h5, it is quite different. You play knight b6, emptying this square on d7. However, when he plays g5, there are two possible ideas once again. We have already come across a similar situation. Knight d7 and knight h5. So if we put the knight here, then later we may use this knight for the attack. But on the other hand, white is left completely free with his own attack. This is coming, forcing us to take, and so on. On the other hand, if we put the knight on h5, we delay white's attack for a long time. White can never do something like this. We always capture with a knight. The knight can never be trapped. We always capture with a knight. So with the knight on h5, this becomes more difficult, and this becomes impossible. However, what is the downside? The knight on h5 may end up isolated. Objectively, the best move is knight h5 by far. So let's see what happened. Queen d2 was played. Bishop here, castles, and white castle, black castles. I also like this position very much for black, although the engine gives some small advantages. Surprisingly, on several occasions, black plays g6 and later f6 or f5. He starts playing on the king side. Let's see what is happening here. Rook g1 and rook c8. King b1. Of course, if white dares to play something like this, we immediately sacrifice on c3, because that's a positional sacrifice. Very good. So king here was played, and g6. Queen f2, we cannot take on c3, he will take on b6. So we go knight c4. And in this position, bishop c1 was played. If, let's see this basic idea, if he takes here, we take, for example, with the rook, we are threatening to capture this knight. And if he goes here, look, we start playing on the other side. We take it. Rook takes. A good thing for black is that this knight is very far away from occupying this square. And what shall we do now? We start playing on the other side. Here we go with f5 or even f6. Another playable and interesting move can be this one. Queen d7, you may see the queen here and so on. If he does something like this, we just go back. Do I play b5 and a5? Well, this play is slow. It's not so effective. We mainly focus on the play on this side, like this, for example, here, maybe I will take it, or rook f7, double the rooks. And if I am left without any plan, yes, I can also consider b5, b4. That's a slow attack. But if I don't have anything better, this is a further improving of our position. So this line is also quite interesting for black. Of course, there are several nuances, but it is quite interesting. When you see g4, you empty the d7 square, although after g5, you don't intend to go to d7, you go to h5. So here it is, knight h5. Let's see this game. We castle, we play here. g6 should be played here sooner or later, and knight c4. White decided not to take, he played here, and f6 was played with very good play for black. Bishop takes f6, depending on the situation, we can take with the rook. One may argue that we opened up the g file. Yes, but as you can clearly see, white doesn't really have any attack here. So this move, bishop h4 here, and we could even capture this knight, but white's play is even more, black's play is even more inspired. Bishop e7, very well, very good arrangement of the pieces, some very good moves, and black won in the end. Look at this idea, bishop d8 and bishop to b6. We have seen this idea in entirely different situations, and yet our mind can still work well and find it, discover it, because we are aware of this possibility. The bishop came to b6. Black was better in this great, fantastic game, and he won later. Let's check another game here. Let's check this high-profile game between Svidler and Morozevich. So let's check. Knight b6, another one of these lines without h5. So here, queen d2, let's see, rook c8, castles, bishop e7, developing the pieces, king b1, very logical stuff. It's not really about memorizing theory. g6 has to be played because when you play f6, he will do this, which is very annoying. So first g6. h4 was played. In the previous game, I believe we saw this. So h4, black played queen c7. They are now out of book. Can white really, let's suppose that we are here. Can white really occupy this square? Not really, because look, we will capture it, and we will control this square from this side, and black is doing very well. So let's see what happened. Rook g2, and finally f6 by Morozevich. So a lot of calculation. They play up and down, and black played a very deep combination, which in the end, if it perfectly played, it's a draw. But once again, we won't really follow this combination here. Once again, it's of course mainly about calculation and about strategy and endgames and so on. So Morozevich won this tournament, and he even won the Russian championship long time ago. Very good. Let's check at least one more game. Here, for example, let's check this one. So, a game by Grandmaster Bologan. Let's see. Rook G1. Yes, this is very fashionable. Black has several interesting ways to play. I also suggest this classical way, E5. Now, white must play knight B3. Knight F3 doesn't make any sense. Knight F3 is played with short castling for white, but white cannot castle short anymore. So he has to play here, preparing to castle long, and this time H5 is very interesting, stopping G4. Very good. This line is here in H4. This line is similar, let's say, to this F3 and bishop E3 variation. Imagine this here, and knight BD7, and bishop here. And now we can consider queen C7 or B5 right away, or just rook C8. All of these moves are playable and good. Let's say queen C7, and this is not really very useful for white. For example, king here, B5, and A3, I go knight B6, and after this, I can play knight C4. I can also play rook B8, intending knight C4. Very good. Let's see what happened in this game. So H5, white played H3 instead of F3, and now this move is interesting, H4. So that after G4, we take en passant. Let's see, bishop E3, here, very classical moves by black now. And queen C7 on rook C8 and so on. Is this preparation, this queen C7? Absolutely not. It is just knowledge, general knowledge of the positions. F4 was played, and once again, which move do we expect to see? We expect to see the move B5, maybe even rook C8, but in general, B5 is the move when we are fully developed with bishop E6, knight BD7. He played rook C8, and king B1, and B5, F5, and he steps on this nice square, intending to continue with B4 and A5 and so on. Bishop D3, indeed, B4 is the idea here, and A5. Can white win a pawn here? Absolutely not, because this is hanging, and this is exactly what happened in the game. So can black play maybe after A5, can white play a move like this? Yes, he can, and we may even consider striking in the center, because although we are not well developed, white's pieces are very passive, or we may even consider such a move, bishop E7. Let's see, can he now play G4? Yes, he can, but look, we are safe enough. We can play king F8, and after this, we can play rook H7. I didn't really need to play bishop E7, so we defend on one side, we attack on the other side with very, very good chances. We have covered the biggest part of the typical ideas in quite big depth, let's say. It wasn't, of course, about theory, but it is nevertheless connected to theory, because the ideas are referring to specific lines, yes? So, of course, we are not done. I hope you liked it and learned several things. Tomorrow we have other things to do, study. It's going to be more general study, more independent study about typical ideas with material imbalances, and even typical endgames of the Najdorf, which you can see quite often statistically. Every possible endgame can occur from every possible opening.
Thank you very much, Yanis, for the excellent lectures you have done today. It was really instructive, and we continue our study tomorrow at the same time. We have three lectures tomorrow as well. Thank you, everyone who participated, and have a nice evening. All the best and goodbye.
Good night. I'll see you all tomorrow.